just go to the one that has the highest price. Go to one that has a little lower price where you can get a good education, and hopefully you'll find that. And don't take on too much debt, and don't expect the government to forgive the debt that you take on.
That was Mitt Romney's advice to a student trying to figure out how to pay for college. Is the high price of higher education destroying the American dream? Joining us now from Washington is Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Director Richard Cordray. Mr. Cordray, thank you as always for your time.
My pleasure, Alex.
So we know you've been cracking down on payday lenders, you've been working to regulate overdraft fees, and now you are looking into student loans. Can you tell us a little bit about the investigation? And I know you've been soliciting stories from students who are looking for loans or trying to get a sense of their experience. What have you learned anecdotally?
Well, we are, and we just started this month taking complaints on our website, consumerfinance.gov, from young people who are struggling with student loans and may have issues about billing disputes or unclear about the terms or conditions of repayment or debt collection issues, which are coming up more and more. So there's a lot of issues people are having about their student loans, as well as also, as you mentioned, the significant burden this is imposing on them and on our economy.
I was actually staggered to learn from the Fed that Americans now owe more on student loans than on credit cards. It's surprising, Richard. I mean, so many of the things that you're doing, I think, are provide an invaluable service to consumers in the country. But that this, I mean, how this happened, I think, is a mystery. Do you have any insight onto how just the rising cost of colleges? I know we have some numbers that we'll share with our audience in a second, but I'd love to know what you think is the sort of causal relationship here.
Well, obviously the debt burden follows closely on the heels of rising tuition, which has been escalating just relentlessly for about the past 20 to 30 years, rising much faster than the rate of inflation. Everybody knows in our society that a college education is often a ticket to a better life, and everybody is chasing that dream. So it's created significant demand, and the debt burden has exploded accordingly.
I want to bring in the panel here. Paul Krugman on Friday in the New York Times brought up some of these stats. Adjusted for inflation, as Richard says, tuition at four-year colleges has increased by more than 70% over the last decade. The Century Foundation says that the New York Times says that adjusted for inflation, state support for higher education has fallen 12% in some states like California. That's up to 20%. This is amazing. In the 1970s, this is according to the Century Foundation, Pell Grants covered nearly 40% of the cost of attending four-year private college. Now it covers only 15%. And yet, Matthew Bishop, I will turn to you first. When we talk about making America competitive, one of the keys to making America competitive, and to a certain extent job creation, is skills and education. And if you listen to the rhetoric around education in this current crop of presidential candidates, they have demagogued the issue. They have demagogued the Department of Education, calling for the shuttering of the Department of Education, and decreasing the amount of involvement that the federal government has in the education process in the United States.
Yeah, I think the problem is much more at the K through 12 level in America than I think it is at higher education. I mean, I think the failure to hold levels of achievement that you get in some of the best European or Asian economies, is a real scandal in America, and particularly about 30% of the young people going into schools just don't get that basic education. And then the higher education scandal is much more, I think, about this change from the for-profit education model coming in and doing a lot of innovation, providing a lot of people who wanted to get an education that isn't available through the traditional universities, and then finding that as that industry took off, a lot of abuses came in as they tried to sort of grow faster than they should have done, and that needs to be protected, and that's why I think Richard Cordray is right to be looking at the student loan question.
I think to solve the riddle of why is education so expensive, go to any college campus in this country, absolutely palatial buildings. The parking lots are made of brick and wrought iron. The gardens are beautiful. The presidents make $500,000 to $1 million. They're running major hospital systems. I mean, so much of college is no longer about the student. It's about having facilities. It's about having huge rec centers. It's not about getting a good education. So I don't think the answer is to throw more money at the problem, because these colleges will charge whatever they can get from students out of a loan. I think you need to bend that down. And Obama has talked about that, bending the price of college back down so that you could actually work your way through college if you wanted to, so that you could take out a loan and not mortgage your future to do it.
But I think there is something to be said. I mean, again, look at the stats. 74% of those attending the most competitive colleges in this country come from families in the top income quartile. 3% come from families in the bottom quartile. Richard, I want to ask you, when you're learning about sort of students and how they're dealing with student loan debt, have you found it to be disproportionately lower? I mean, I'm assuming obviously income is being taken into consideration here, but what kind of portrait is emerging from the students who've been targeted the most, who've had the sort of greatest difficulties with student loans?
It's a portrait that should raise great concern to everybody across this country, because what we're talking about here are young people with talent, with ambition, with intelligence, who are wanting to get that higher education. They don't have the finances easily to be able to afford it. And those are the ones we want most to succeed in our society. And if instead they're getting trapped into private student loan burdens that are unsustainable for them, that aren't going to work for them to get that education, or they come out, they're under a crushing debt burden that will hold them back in life, we are disserving this society, and we're disserving America's future.
Richard Cordray, thank you. We will look forward to monitoring all of your efforts and learning more about them in the weeks and months and years to come.
Thank you.